Well, it's that time for Hypertufa Part 3. All of my little projects here, I unveiled, let's see, Sunday. This is Tuesday. They are starting to dry out and lighten in color, but they will continue to get lighter both in weight and color as the moisture completely leaves the concrete. Now, if you remember, I have 3 projects here where I added the colorant, which would be this right here. This was a liquid cement color by Quikrete it's called Buff, but it actually is an orangey color. I don't know why they call it Buff. But this is my pumpkin with that color. And then I have 2 little pots up front, same color. So with these, I could acid stain them, but I mean, that's kind of not the point. The point was to add the color in the beginning so that I did not have to add any sort of stain to the concrete. So basically, these are ready for the next step. With the pumpkin, I do not need to do the next step because it is not going to be a planter. Now, if you know anything about concrete, Portland cement, you know that it is from limestone, and so it's basically pulverized limestone. And lime has to be neutralized if you want to put a plant in it. So the easy way to neutralize it is with vinegar. 1 part vinegar to 9 parts water. Now, if you don't have a hole in it, you could just pour it in the well of the pot. But if you do have a hole in it, then you just need to submerge it in a bucket. So this has a hole. Here's my bucket. 9 parts water, 1 part vinegar. So I'm just going to submerge it in my bucket. Now, anything else that I want to just leave unstained, as in a pot, that I want to put a plant in, I need to also go ahead and do that. So I am going to do it with this little pot. And I'm going to zoom in, let you see. This one has been out of its bag almost 3 weeks now instead of 2 weeks and 2 days, because I took it out last Wednesday instead of Sunday. So you can see it's considerably lighter than the rest of these. But I do love how it looks. And I've already drilled my hole. So I'm going to submerge it too. Now, in this point in time, you want to go ahead and drill your holes in your planters if you haven't already made a hole when you made your pot. Like this one, I made the hole when I made the pot. So I don't have to worry about it. But any of the rest of them, I do need to go ahead and drill the hole. This pot right here, yeah, I think it's this one. I decided I'm not going to drill a hole in this one because I want to use it for fresh flowers. So I don't want a hole in it. But the rest of them need a hole. So I'm going to take this one right here just to demo. I'll put it in my trough so that you can see how easy it is to do. You do, however, have to have a drill bit, carbide tip, for a concrete masonry bit. I'm using a 3/8. Don't want to go any bigger than that because, well, the potty mix could fall out of the hole. So 3/8 is a good size. With this size pot, I just need 1 hole. Ooh. You remember I had about 1.5 to 2 inches in there. Usually goes a little faster than that, but this one was pretty thick. So now I have my hole. I'll do one more here just to show you. Oh, no, I already did that one. Okay, we'll do this one. My basket. Probably need, I can probably just get by with one hole for this. See, a lot faster on that one. Now, if you're really struggling, if it's extremely hard, you can also have a spray bottle of water or just a little cup of water and occasionally pour some water while you're drilling, and that will help it go through. But these, like I said, there's still a lot of moisture in these, so it drills real easily. This pumpkin and this pumpkin, remember, I knocked its top off. I knocked this guy's top off too. And yesterday, I used some Gorilla Glue, and it's holding just fine. So, I will glue this baby back on. The next step is going to be staining. If you don't want to work with concrete acid stains, you can simply use regular wood stains, water-based or oils. But just understand that over time that's going to probably fade and come off because it is a paint, and painted concrete doesn't bond, paint and concrete, without a lot of extra prep. But with just little decorative things, it would probably be fine if you don't want to use the concrete acid stains. I like the acid stains because I've worked with concrete for a lot of years. Back when I had my decorative finishing store, Phobiz, other than just plaster, Venetian plasters, and different kinds of faux products for walls, we also were a distributor of Bella Vernici concrete overlay, which I think that company's out of business now. But I taught classes and we did a ton of concrete work, contract work in various businesses and homes. What are concrete acid stains? Well, just to give you just a real brief thing about why this works. Concrete acid stains have different kinds of acids in them, usually not real concentrated, but a little bit, like hydrochloric or phosphoric. There are some other acids that can be in it too. And the purpose of the acids is to kind of etch the surface a little bit and bring the lime that's in the Portland cement to the surface. But the acid is not really what stains the concrete. It's the mineral salts is what they're called. They call them salts because they're granular, and different kinds of minerals react differently to the lime. So if you think about the pH scale, you got 7 is neutral. Anything from 0 to 6 is acidic, and the lower the number, the more acidic. Anything from 8 to 14 is alkaline, and the higher the number, the more alkaline. Have you ever made the volcano? Baking soda, pour a little vinegar on it. The baking soda is alkaline, the vinegar is acidic. You put the two together and it neutralizes. It has a chemical reaction and then eventually it fizzes out, right? Well, then it's neutral. It's at that 7. That's what we're doing with the pots and the buckets. The pots have a lot of lime in them. So when we add the vinegar to the water and we put it in there, it's bringing it to neutral. Okay, so the mineral salts are what react with the lime, and the acid helps too, but it permanently stains the concrete. It changes, chemically changes the color of it. And that is a permanent situation. You're not going to change it. So some people don't like using acid stains for that reason, because they want to be able to really control the color, because you're never quite sure what you're going to get. There might be more lime in one concrete batch than another, but I like the look. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you a few little extra things too. Now I have 4 colors. This company, I've never used this company before, but I Googled them and I liked what I saw. It's called Concrete Camouflage. And goodness, they've got like 24 colors. But I've worked with a lot of these types of colors before, so I got the 4 main ones that I knew I wanted to use. This is leather brown, and then I have a faded linen, sea mist, and slate. Now when I would do concrete work and teach classes and do these various overlays, I also brought in what we called interference media, because you can throw things on the concrete during the staining process to get extra oomph and different looks. For example, let me get, actually this was one of my student books when I taught Bella Vernici. Here it is, interference media. Salt. If you throw salt on while it's staining, you get a fissuring look effect and a little bit of orange color. If you throw some sugar on it, you get a yellowish color. Baking soda. You get a very strong orange cast with baking soda, and with some of the acid stains it actually neutralizes it. So you need to kind of be careful with the baking soda, because you can end up with holes of color, because it'll neutralize. One of my favorite things to use, and I don't have any, were iron filings. I would go to Franklin Tire and Auto and get a bucket of iron filings free. That gives a kind of a bluish cast to it, and there's a little bit of rust outline wherever the filings are. I like the iron filings. Miracle Grow, that's a cool one. You know, the greeny blue Miracle Grow. If you pop that on while you got your stain going, you get these crazy bluish green colors. It's pretty cool. In fact, my countertop in my laundry room has a lot of Miracle Grow thrown in it. Here's a picture of that. Another thing you can use, believe it or not, is cornflakes. You can crush them up and throw it on there, but it's a negative effect. Basically, it just blocks the stain from getting to that part. It'd be next to impossible to do on something like this that's vertical and round and all that, but on a flat surface, you can use cornflakes. Just remember that whatever you throw on it, you have to clean up. The last thing I have on the list here is coffee and tea. Now I mean the actual granules, coffee grounds or the actual tea. And that's going to give you some varying degrees of brown. And I'm going to actually use, I brought out some coffee grounds and I brought out some salt. So I'm going to use that with these two things. I've got my leather brown here. Now when I would stain concrete, I would always wet the surface first. Water is your friend when you're staining with concrete. And by the way, this has got water in it too. That you got a little bit of the acids, the mineral salts, and then water is the medium that will help it to penetrate deeply into the concrete. If you just hit this dry with either a sprayer or a brush, you're going to get brush strokes and you're going to get spray dots. And so if you wet it first, then it's going to flow much better. Now, I like to use sprayers. You need to make sure with these acid stains, if you use them, that everything is plastic. No metal parts, because it will corrode them. It all has to be plastic. So let me go get my hose. Since I'm nice and outside, you need to wear gloves. Don't want it on your skin. You need eye protection. You need to make sure your gloves are long enough. If you're using a huge sprayer, you need to be well covered and in a ventilated space. If I were inside with no windows or doors, I would wear a mask. I'm outside. These are little projects, so I don't really need to worry about the ventilation. So let me get my water hose. My table is not on level ground out here. Always a good thing to start on the bottom side. Now, the color that comes out is not the color that it will be, so don't panic during the oxidation process. Remember, this is leather brown. You want to be generous with it. Don't necessarily want it to puddle. All right, I'm not going to do anything else to that one. All right, with this one, I'm not going to hit it solid everywhere. So that's my leather brown. You can see how the pumpkin's already starting to really change. Now this is slate. The leather brown is a darker color, obviously, than the slate. And it's probably, if it's anything like the others that I have used, it's probably going to be stronger than the slate. So I'm pretty much just covering all 100% with the slate here. The brown, the leather brown will still come through. I don't believe the slate will override the brown. Okay, so now we'll add some stuff. Remember, the salt will give some fissuring and kind of a little bit of yellowing. Don't want to use a lot of salt, but definitely want to use some coffee. Now we're going to let this react for a minimum of about 4 hours. You can leave it all the way to overnight, 24 hours. The longer you leave it, usually the darker it gets. You will see a white residue start to form, and I will show you that when we come back and after a few hours and do the next step. So that's these two. I'm going to move them aside, clean off the table with my stain before I do another stain, because I don't want leather brown on everything. Since I'm outside and I'm on the driveway, it's perfectly fine to just wash this off with a hose. I just need to make sure I have anything that could get stained out of the way. Since I don't have 4 squirt bottles, which would be the nicest thing to have, I'm going to go ahead and spray what other things I want to spray with the slate. I'll have to clean out the leather brown bottle in a moment. But I'm going to do these two things solidly. And I did not wet this. I want it to take pretty strongly, and the spray bottle seems to be working fine, not real spotty, so I didn't wet it. Okay. Same thing with this one, I think. I'm not going to wet it either because I'm just going to do this solid. Now this pumpkin, I want some variation on it. So let me pause. I did wet this pumpkin down. And now what I have in this sprayer is the faded linen. That's the lightest color. And it's going to get 100% coverage. Now with the slate, I want to put a little slate on there, but I really don't want it sprayed. So I am going to just hit it this way, let it run down the spines of the pumpkin. You can brush it on too. And let's hit it with just a little bit of coffee and some salt. So to finish up on this pumpkin, I'm just going to pour a little bit of this sea mist. And instead of on the ribs, I'm just going to dabble here and there on some of the puffy parts. Getting a nice fizz reaction with that. This is better than mud pies as a child. This is so much fun. Off you go to the side. I think these pots, I'm just going to hit them both. Kind of the same thing. The slate. Didn't wet it. Light mist here and there. Now, normally when we would do floors and things, obviously you wouldn't be wanting your fingerprints on it because you'd leave fingerprints. Hopefully that won't happen with these, but we used to wear soccer cleats because that would leave the least design. And this is the faded linen again. Time to wash that up and do the last three. All right, this pot I am going to do solidly in the sea mist. I did not wet it. Don't really know that it's important to do the inside, but I did. This pot is the one with no hole that I'm going to use to hold fresh flowers. So I am going to wet it. Going to use a faded linen. Not necessarily hitting it totally solid. Now, before I put on the sea mist, I'm going to throw some coffee grounds on it. Because I saw it react pretty well on that pumpkin. So, let's watch it. Not 100%, probably about 75% with the sea mist. I'm gonna clean all this off and bring the trough. This is still not real lightweight, but it's a whole lot more lightweight than it would have been if it had been solid concrete. So I think it'll be easier to do all the sides if I turn it upside down. Not going to wet it. I'm just going to use the faded linen and the coffee grounds. All right, now we wait. This is the next morning. After 3 hours yesterday, I washed the residue and scrubbed with a little brush. And this is the next morning. I'm going to wet these down and show you what they could look like. What it looks like damp is what it would look like with a sealer applied. So let's do a little before and after here. This pot's interesting. The slate grabbed at the bottom quite a bit. You can see the bluish green sea mist. This I Do pumpkin doesn't seem to have a lot of color to it, but wait until it's wet. The basket doesn't seem to have a lot of variation of color either, but you'll see a difference when it's wet. Trough has a lot of goldy tones. Dry anyway. All right, let's get some water on it. You can see quite a difference. Now actually this pot I liked better dry, so I won't add sealer to it. This pot I like better wet, so I will add sealer. The basket has more vibrant color wet, so it needs sealer. The trough, I think, has nicer color wet. This slate pumpkin has a better color wet. So it's just a matter of what you like. So now I let it completely dry, and we will come back when they are dry and I'll show you the sealer. It's been another 24 hours since I showed you what these things looked like wet. I wanted to give it plenty of time to dry. Now, I want to talk just a little bit more about neutralizing the acid stain. I mentioned it earlier, but I need to probably go a little more in depth. This company, Concrete Camouflage, recommends using an ammonia water mix to neutralize the stain. A couple thoughts on that. I just don't like to work with ammonia. I think the vinegar will work just fine. Secondly, when I used to do a lot of acid staining, I mean, really and truthfully, after you have acid stained, there's not any lime left in the concrete to react with. So it's probably just a precautionary thing. And the only reason to do that at all is because, again, if you're planting something in it, you don't want, if there happens to be any lime, you don't want that penetrating your potting mix. But the other reason that you need to neutralize is if you want to apply a sealer. You don't have to seal any of these things. And by the way, you don't have to neutralize with even vinegar if you don't want to. You can leave these outside, and the rain over time will make the lime dissipate. Okay. Sealers. Again, I've not used this company before. This is called Clear Shield acrylic concrete sealer. Hopefully they've perfected sealers for concrete, because back in my day it was hard to find something that would bond real well and stay bonded. You usually had to redo your sealers continuously. The one thing that you could use that you don't have to redo, except maybe buff it a little bit every now and then, are waxes, petroleum-based waxes, carnauba waxes. There are two kinds that I like. The first one is bry wax or brie wax. I've always called it bry wax. Other people say brie wax. Very old company. The wax comes in different colors and in clear. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's the Ford Museum, maybe, in Washington, D.C. That concrete floor was not acid stained. It was completely covered with bry wax and buffed out, really shiny. But like I said, they're all different colors, so you don't even have to acid stain concrete. You can actually just wax it with something that has a coloring in it. And the other one that I like, it smells a lot better than the bry wax, is Liberon. It too comes in a variety of colors and in clear. When you apply a wax, you want to use a soft cotton rag. Everybody remember the show? Wax on, wax off. That's basically what you do. You apply it thinly in a circular motion, get your wax on there, let it dry, and then you need to buff it out. Okay, now I'm going to pour this in my little tub here. You do need to wear gloves and eye protection. Now with this stuff, you do not want it to puddle, and you want to use very thin coats. You might end up having to do two if you're wanting a real good solid sheen. We'll see what it requires on this. You don't want to apply it in direct sunlight, which is why I'm out here really early. Depending on your humidity, it's going to be, drying times are going to vary. I think I'm going to start with my pumpkin here. You can use a sprayer. You can use a roller, a nap roller, like a 1/4 inch or up to 3/4 inch probably. Nap roller, I think it said. I'm just using the foam brush. It's easy, it's quick. But this stuff is always just like water, so you need to make sure you catch your drips. And like I said, do not apply too thickly. If you get it too thick, it's going to turn milky on you. And it goes on milky, but it dries clear. Pretty much the way all sealers are. Really not going to worry about the underside, the bottoms. Plus, if I did the bottoms, it ended up sticking to the plastic. Now, like I said, you don't have to apply a sealer. On this pot here, for example, I'm not going to put one because I like the way the color looks without the sealer on. Remember, the way you tell that is wet it. And what it looks like damp is what it's going to look like with sealer on it. This particular sealer, I believe, is a satin. So it's not going to be super shiny, which is good. I don't really want it super shiny. If I wanted super shiny, I would use the wax. Now the instructions on this sealer, doggies. The instructions on this sealer say that you can apply your wax after you've put on a couple of coats of this. I don't know why that would be necessary. If I were going to use wax, I would just use wax. Period. And I would skip this step. Well, that's it for one coat of sealer. We will come back when it's dry. And I've got a few things to finish up and show you, to include aging some of these to look old and moss covered. So I'm going to raise this umbrella because the sun's about to peek over. And when all these are very dry, probably wait till tomorrow, I'll be back.